Welcome to Shattered Ties, where trust is broken, loyalties are tested, and hidden betrayals come to light. Here, we uncover the darkest sides of family, friendship, and love, stories of deception, greed, revenge, and the quiet pursuit of justice. So sit back, listen closely, and step into a world where every shattered bond leaves a scar. They told Caleb his father chose to sell the farm. They told him grief was making him suspicious. But the doorbell camera caught every lie his sister whispered while Dad was still alive. And at the funeral, Caleb finally pressed play. The call came at 1:17 in the morning, when the room was dark enough that my phone screen looked violent. My sister's name filled the display. I had not spoken to her in 8 months. Not properly. She sent updates about Dad the way corporations send apologies after poisoning a river, brief, polished, full of passive voice. Dad is adjusting, Dad is resting. Dad had a difficult night. Dad prefers fewer visitors. Every sentence sounded less like care and more like a door being locked from the inside. I answered because there are names you answer, no matter how badly they have treated you. Caleb, she said, and I knew before the next word that our father was gone. Not from sorrow in her voice. Had always been able to produce sorrow. She could turn it on like porch light. I knew because she was too careful. No sob, no silence, no shattering, just my name, held delicately, as if she had practiced the exact weight of it. Dad passed tonight, she said, peacefully. The nurse said it was quick. I sat up. My mouth went dry. For months I had been asking to speak to him. For months she had told me he was too tired, confused, or asleep. My last real conversation with him had been in February, before the stroke stole half his speech but not his mind. He had gripped my wrist with his good hand and whispered, "Don't let her sign anything." I had asked who. He had only said, "Home." After that, moved him from the hospital to Maple Glen Care, changed the visitor list, and told everyone I was stressing him out with financial paranoia. I lived 3 states away then, managing bridge repairs for a state contractor, working 70-hour weeks because bills do not stop for family disaster. I believed I could fix it by coming home with the right paperwork and the right lawyer. I had been 2 days from driving back. "When is the service?" I asked. "Saturday," she said, too fast. It was Wednesday. That's soon. Dad wanted it simple. Dad wanted hymns loud enough to shake the beams. Dad wanted fried chicken in the church hall, every farmhand invited, and the old flag from the barn folded beside his coffin. Dad wanted the Hart place kept together because, in his words, land was a language our family had already forgotten how to read. "Where is he?" I asked. "His funeral home. I'll be there tomorrow." A pause, the first real one. "Caleb, I need you to stay calm when you arrive." That sentence put more ice in me than the news of his death. "Why?" She inhaled softly. "There are things Dad decided before he passed, things you may not like." "What things?" "We'll talk in person." Outside my apartment window, a truck moved through rain, tires hissing on asphalt. I stared at my suitcase in the corner, still half-packed from the plan I had made too late. I said, "What did you do?" Her voice hardened by 1 degree. "This is exactly what I mean. You always make grief into an accusation." Then she hung up. I did not sleep. I opened the folder I had been building for months. Dad's medical forms, old deeds, the power of attorney he had refused to sign, bank statements that no longer arrived, and one voicemail from him I had replayed so many times the sound was bruised. "Cal," he had said, breath rough, words broken but clear enough. "Farm, watch the north gate, camera knows." At the time, I thought stroke damage had tangled the sentence. Now, while the rain scratched the window and my sister prepared my father's funeral like a stage show, I wrote the words down exactly. "Farm, north gate, camera knows." By noon the next day, I was back in county, where every road knew my childhood and every field looked smaller than memory promised. The Hart farm sat 7 miles outside town, past the feed store, past the church with the leaning steeple, past the bend where Dad used to slow down because deer crossed there at dusk. 212 acres of soybean, pasture, creek bottom, and stubborn family history. My great-grandfather bought the first 40 acres with money from repairing train lines. My grandfather added the pasture. Dad bought the North Ridge from the bank after his own brother lost it gambling. "Never sell dirt that remembers your people," Dad used to say. The north gate was open when I arrived. That was wrong. Dad kept that gate chained even when he was healthy enough to work sunrise to sunset. He said open gates invited strangers, coyotes, and bad decisions, usually in that order. A white sign had been planted beside it. "Pending development. ASHFRD Meadows Luxury HOMES. Inquiries. BRIGHTSTUNE Land Group. For a moment, the world narrowed until only those words existed. Pending development. The land behind the gate rolled toward the ridge in winter brown, quiet and familiar. The old oak stood where it always had, leafless arms spread against the gray sky. Beyond it was the pond where Dad taught me to skip stones and taught me never to trust her smile. She had shoved me in when I was 9, then cried before I could climb out, telling Dad I had scared her by falling. I pulled the sign out of the ground with both hands. Mud clung to the stakes. I threw it into the bed of my truck hard enough to dent the metal. The farmhouse looked abandoned from the driveway. Curtains gone. Porch chairs missing. The swing Mom had bought before she died had been removed, leaving 2 rusted hooks trembling in the wind. The front door had a new lockbox hanging from the knob. I tried my key anyway. It did not fit. Before I could decide whether grief excused breaking a window, a truck came up the drive. Mercer stepped out, heavier than I remembered, his beard gone white at the chin. Had worked for Dad since I was 16. He knew every fence post by complaint and every cow by insult. "Caleb," he said. That was all. He took off his cap. I looked at the house. When did this happen? His eyes moved to the lockbox. "She changed the locks in June. Said your dad asked her to." Dad was in rehab in June. "I know." The words sat between us. "What else?" I asked. Rubbed the back of his neck. Survey crews came in July. Appraiser in August. Men in suits in September. Your sister told everyone Arthur had signed because medical bills were eating the farm alive. He would have called me. He tried. I turned, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a folded envelope, soft from being handled too much. Your dad gave this to me the last time she let me see him, told me not to mail it, said to hold it until you came in person. My fingers shook when I opened it. Inside was a farm receipt from May. Dad's handwriting on the back, shaky but unmistakable. "Cal, she wants me quiet. No sale, no power. Northgate records everything. Password still your birthday plus your mother's year. Don't trust her tears." Dad. I read it twice. Then a third time, because some truths need more than one entry wound. "Northgate records everything," I said. Nodded toward the cedar post beside the gate. Mounted under the old birdhouse was a doorbell camera I had installed 3 Christmases ago after trespassers stole copper from the irrigation shed. I had forgotten about it. Dad had not. "She didn't," said. I looked at the camera. Its small black eye tilted toward the driveway, the gate, the sign. Every person who had entered believing the farm was already theirs. For the first time since call, I felt something other than shock. Not hope. Hope was too soft. I felt direction. Met me at its funeral home wearing black silk and our mother's pearls. That was the first cruelty. Mom had left those pearls to both of us in a note written before the cancer reached her bones. "Share them," she wrote, "because both of you came from me." Took them after the burial and said shared things needed one responsible keeper. She was 22 then, already fluent in theft disguised as organization. Now she stood beneath the funeral home's stained glass window, greeting neighbors with both hands around theirs, eyes wet at the edges, voice soft enough to make people lean closer. Grief made her beautiful. It always had. She understood angles, lighting, and how to appear wounded without looking weak. "Caleb," she said when she saw me, "you made it." "You sound surprised." Her mouth tightened for half a second. "I meant I'm glad." Behind her, Dad lay in the viewing room. I could see the edge of the coffin, dark wood, cheap brass handles. Not the pine box he wanted. Not the flag. No church choir. No farmhands. Just lilies and silence and my sister's careful control of every visible thing. I moved toward him. She touched my arm. "Before you go in," she said, "I need to warn you, he looked different at the end." I looked at her hand, until she removed it. "People do," I said, "when someone isolates them." Her eyes flashed, then softened as 2 women from the church approached. "He's angry," she whispered to them, not quietly enough. "He hasn't processed any of this." The women looked at me with immediate pity, which is only accusation wearing gloves. I walked past them. Dad looked smaller than death should have been allowed to make him. Arthur Hart had been a broad man, all shoulders and weather, with hands that could mend a baler, hold a newborn calf, or cut a sandwich into perfect triangles for a child with the same unshowy competence. In the coffin, his hands were folded over a tie he would have hated. I stood beside him and tried to feel grief, but rage kept getting there first. "I came back," I said under my breath. "I'm sorry I was late." The room did not answer. When I turned, was watching me from the doorway. "The will reading is after the service," she said. "At the house." The house I no longer have a key to. Dad transferred authority to me. It was necessary. He wrote me a note. Her face changed before she could stop it. There, the smallest fracture. A note, she asked. From May. Caleb, Dad was confused in May. He thought Mom was still alive some days. He accused nurses of stealing his boots. Dad had accused one nurse of stealing his boots because the facility lost them, then charged him for replacements. He had been correct. He also said he never agreed to sell the farm. His eyes filled, right on command. Do you know what it was like, she said. Being here every day, watching him decline, paying bills, talking to doctors. You got to be the angry son from a distance. I had to be the daughter who stayed. That was her favorite weapon, proximity. She treated being near a problem as proof she had the right to own it. Then show me the sale documents. Talk to the attorney. Which attorney? Dad chose him. Dad hated. Everyone in town did except people rich enough to enjoy his usefulness. Had helped half the county move assets around sick relatives before nursing homes and creditors could see them. Dad chose, I repeated. Yes. And Dad chose to sell too. Yes. And Dad chose to keep me out of the house. Her tears stopped. He chose peace, she said. From the viewing room, Dad's face looked waxen and far away. But in my pocket, his note pressed against my thigh like a pulse. No sale, no power. Don't trust her tears. I looked at our mother's pearls around her throat, at the funeral home full of people ready to believe whatever performance hurt them least. Saturday, I said. What? You wanted a service by Saturday. Make it big. Invite everyone. She narrowed her eyes. Why? Because Dad deserves witnesses. The camera app had not been updated in 2 years. That nearly saved us. Modern technology wants you to forget old things exist. Accounts migrate, passwords reset, cloud subscriptions expire, and evidence disappears behind the polished lie of convenience. But Dad disliked subscriptions on principle. He said paying monthly for a thing you already owned was how companies train people to enjoy being robbed. So the Northgate camera recorded to a local hub, hidden in the mudroom, connected to a backup drive I installed when I still believed our family had normal problems. I waited until after midnight, parked behind the equipment shed, and broke into my own childhood home through the cellar window I had used at 17 when I missed curfew. Inside, the house smelled wrong. Not dirty. Empty, like strangers had cleaned away every sign of us without understanding which pieces mattered. Mom's ceramic rooster was gone from the kitchen shelf. Dad's seed caps were gone from the hooks. The wall by the pantry, wherein I had measured our height in pencil until she scratched out my marks one summer, had been painted over. I stood there too long. Then I remembered I was trespassing in a house that had carried my last name for 74 years. The mudroom hub was behind the freezer, exactly where I had mounted it. I plugged in my laptop. The app blinked, complained, then asked for a password. My birthday plus my mother's year. 3/14/1962. The files loaded slowly. Thousands of clips, most triggered by wind, deer, delivery trucks, pickup, Dad limping toward the mailbox before his stroke. Seeing him alive in fragments hurt more than the coffin. There he was in March, cursing the gate latch. In April, waving at a neighbor. In May, leaning on a cane, staring directly into the camera as if he knew I would someday be on the other side of it. Everything. Then I searched by date. June 9. The day said the locks changed. The clip opened with at the north gate, wearing sunglasses and a white blouse, standing beside, and a man I recognized from his website, Pierce, development director, smile like a freshly sharpened shovel. At first, wind swallowed their voices, then stepped closer to the gate. Near the camera, phone pressed to her ear. No, she said. He can't object. He doesn't have capacity on paper. Handled it. My hands went cold. Said something I could not hear. Laughed. Caleb, he's 3 states away and broke enough to be manageable. Dad keeps asking for him, but the nurses know not to put calls through unless I approve it. I paused the video. The room was dark except for my laptop screen. The old freezer hummed beside me. Somewhere in the walls, pipes ticked like a clock trying not to be noticed. I pressed play. Opened a folder on the hood of his car. Once the deed transfers, he said, voice clearer now, wires the first payment into the estate account, then your management fee disperses separately. And the medical liens, asked, waved a hand. Exaggerated. People hear nursing home and stop asking questions. Sympathy does the paperwork for you. I leaned closer to the screen. Looked toward the house. Arthur still hasn't signed the final consent. Smiled. Not the funeral smile, not the sister smile. The real one. Then we used the durable power. He won't remember by the time Caleb asks. Dad remembered. Dad wrote the note. Dad told me the camera knew. I saved the clip to 3 drives, then kept searching. July 22 showed survey crews. August 11 showed screaming at Dad on the porch, his words slurred but clear enough. No sale. September 3 showed handing her a bottle of champagne beside the gate. October 18 gave me the confession. Stood alone at dusk, arguing on speakerphone with someone named. I didn't steal it, she snapped. I rescued it before Caleb turned Dad into a vegetable farmer with delusions. The old man was alive, yes, but alive doesn't mean in charge. The wind died at that exact second, as if the farm itself wanted every syllable preserved. Once he's gone, she continued, the funeral will shut Caleb up. People don't fight grieving daughters. I stopped breathing. Then from somewhere upstairs, floorboards creaked. I closed the laptop. A flashlight beam swept across the kitchen doorway. Who's there? Called. My sister had come home. But I could have run through the cellar. That would have been sensible, quiet, strategic. The kind of thing lawyers later appreciate because it prevents unnecessary complications. Instead, I stepped into the kitchen holding the laptop under one arm and Dad's note in my pocket. Stood by the back door with a flashlight and a small can of pepper spray. She wore yoga pants, a wool coat, and the startled anger of someone finding a ghost using her furniture. What are you doing in my house? She said. I almost thanked her for saying it so clearly. Your house. Legally, yes, for now. For now, I repeated. Her eyes moved to the laptop. Give me that. No. Caleb, you're trespassing. I could call the sheriff. Call him. I'll show him the Northgate videos. The words landed. I watched her calculate. Had always been good at quick arithmetic. What could be softened, what required tears, what required attack. She chose attack. Dad was sick, she said. Those clips won't mean what you think they mean. He had lucid moments and confused ones. He made decisions and forgot them. That's what decline looks like. You wouldn't know because you weren't here. I know what you told Pierce. Her face went still. I quoted her quietly. Alive doesn't mean in charge. The flashlight lowered. For the first time in my life, I saw without a mask prepared. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Underneath was not guilt, not fear. Resentment. Raw, old, and endless. Do you have any idea what it was like being the daughter who stayed? She said. You keep saying that like staying gave you ownership. Because it gave me the bill. Her voice cracked, but not with sadness. It gave me the calls, the doctors, the diapers, the episodes, the smell of that place. The way he looked at me like I was the enemy because I was the only one making decisions nobody else wanted. He didn't want the farm sold. He didn't know what he wanted. He wrote me a note. She flinched again. She said, of course, that old drunk. He's sober. He's loyal to dead men and bad land. I stared at her. Bad land. She laughed once, short and ugly. You all worship dirt. Dad's you. Acting like acres are holy because Grandpa planted beans on them. I watched that farm eat our childhood. Mom died with medical debt and a kitchen roof that leaked because Dad would rather save the south pasture than sell 10 acres. So you sold all of it. I monetized it. There it was, the language of theft after it graduates college. Offered enough to solve everything, she said. Dad's care, my debt, the house repairs, a future. Your future. I earned one. The words came out so quickly, I knew they had been waiting years. You left, she said. You got scholarships, jobs, a whole life where you could talk about the farm like a memory instead of a prison. I stayed here and cleaned up everyone else's endings. Dad owed me. Dad owed you a thank you, not 200 acres. She stepped closer. And what did he owe you? The heroic son who visited twice a year and sent checks he wanted applause for. That cut because pieces of it were true. Distance had made me righteous in ways proximity would have complicated. But truth used as a knife is still a knife. He owed me the chance to hear his voice, I said. You took that. Her mouth opened, closed. For 1 second, something like shame moved through her. Then she crushed it. Get out, she said. After I copy the rest. She lifted the pepper spray. I lifted my phone. It was already recording. Smiled then slowly. You think recordings fix everything? No. I stepped toward the cellar door. But they make liars nervous. She did not follow me, not then. As I climbed out through the cellar window, mud on my hands, laptop under my coat, I heard something crash inside the kitchen. My sister was breaking things, to prove she had not already broken enough. But Maple Glen Care had beige walls, plastic plants, and the smell of industrial soup trying to cover fear. I went there Friday morning, with Dad's death certificate request in one hand and a lie ready in the other. The receptionist recognized my last name and immediately looked over my shoulder, as if might materialize from the vending machines. "I'm Arthur Hart's son," I said. "I need his personal effects and billing statements." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Your sister is listed as primary contact. My father is dead. I'm listed in his medical file. Check the emergency intake documents from February." She checked, her face changed. "People think records are cold. They are not. Records can be the last warm thing a person leaves behind, because they remember what others try to revise." "One moment," she said. The administrator came out 10 minutes later. Devon Price, navy suit, soft hands, eyes trained by liability seminars. He guided me into an office with a framed mission statement on the wall. Compassion, dignity, family. The cheaper the frame, the more expensive the lie. "Mr. Hart," he said, "we are deeply sorry for your loss. I want itemized bills, call logs, visitor logs, medication notes, any documents signed under power of attorney." His expression cooled. "That is a complex request. My sister restricted my calls. I can't speak to family dynamics. My father asked for me repeatedly." He opened a folder. "Your sister indicated that contact with you caused agitation. Did you document the agitation?" He blinked. "Every time," I said. "Date staff member behavior, that's standard, isn't it?" Devon looked at the folder again. There was no agitation record. I knew before he admitted it because his mouth became small. "Mr. Hart," he said carefully, "your father did ask for you on several occasions. Staff were instructed to route family communications through Ms. Hart because she held medical authority." "Show me the authority." He hesitated. The document he produced had Dad's shaky signature at the bottom and initials on every page. "Durable power of attorney, medical and financial. Signed June 3. Witnessed by 2 Maple Glen staff members, and notarized by assistant." The signature was wrong. Not wildly, not cartoonishly. Wrong in the way forged things are wrong when someone studies shape but not pressure. Dad's real signature dug into paper like it was plowing. This one floated. "He couldn't hold a pen on June 3, I said. Devon adjusted his cuffs. "Our notes indicate he had assistants." "Who assisted?" He did not answer. I looked at the witness names. One belonged to a nurse, Mendes. The other belonged to a therapy aide, Jordan Pike. "I want to speak to them." "No longer works here." "Why?" "Personnel matters are confidential." "Jordan." "Unavailable." I smiled, and Devon liked that less than anger. "Then I'll need copies." "We would require a subpoena for certain materials." I placed Dad's handwritten note on the desk, not close enough for him to take. Arthur Hart wrote that he signed no power and approved no sale. I have video of my sister and discussing using durable authority because he wouldn't sign final consent. If Maple Glen helped create the document that made that possible, you may want to decide whether you're protecting privacy or evidence tampering. Devon's face lost color in small, polite increments. "Give me an hour," he said. I gave him 40 minutes. He returned with a sealed envelope of logs and the personal effects box they had never offered. Inside were Dad's glasses, his watch, a church bulletin, 2 peppermints, and a small spiral notebook. The first pages were ordinary. Meal complaints, therapy times, names of nurses he liked. Then the handwriting changed after the stroke, larger, uneven, furious in its effort. June 3, they put pen in hand. M moved it, said sign or lose farm to state. I said no. June 5, asked for Cal, they said he is busy. June 11, M says farm sold to save me. I am not saved. I sat in my truck reading, while rain blurred the windshield. Dad had not been confused. He had been trapped in a building full of people willing to call paperwork care. Mendes lived above her sister's hair salon in a town 40 minutes east, and she opened the door like she already knew why I had come. "Arthur's son," she said. "Caleb." She looked past me toward the stairs. "Did send you." "No." "Good." I was about to slam the door. Her apartment smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. 2 kids' backpacks sat by the couch. She motioned for me to sit, then remained standing, arms folded, exhaustion carved deep around her eyes. "I wondered how long," she said. "How long for what?" Before that woman finally ran out of people to fool. I placed copies of the power of attorney on the table. "Your name is on this as witness." She looked at it and laughed without humor. "Of course it is." "You didn't witness it." "I witnessed a crime pretending to be a form. Told it in a flat voice, the way nurses speak when they have learned that emotion wastes energy the body needs for shift work. June 3. Dad in room 214, right hand weak, speech slow but mind present. Arrived with his assistant and a notary stamp. Devin Price hovered in the hallway. Dad refused to sign. He said, "No sale, Caleb." Over and over, said, "Your sister kept telling him you were trying to put him under guardianship and sell everything to pay your debts." I closed my eyes. "I don't have debts." I figured, your dad didn't believe her either. Then how did the signature happen? His mouth tightened. They waited until after medication. He was due for muscle relaxers and pain meds. Strong ones, I argued. Devin said the family requested comfort measures. When I came back, had his hand around the pen. She moved it. The notary stamped anyway. My chest felt hollow. "Why didn't you report it?" "I did." She went to a drawer and pulled out copies of emails, incident reports, and one termination letter. I filed internally. They said I misunderstood. Then I called the state elder abuse hotline. A week later, Maple Glen fired me for charting irregularities. Did the state investigate? Someone called. Devin told them Arthur had dementia, had authority, and I was disgruntled. She sat across from me then, her face pale with remembered fury. "Your father wasn't demented. He was slowed down, angry and scared. But he knew exactly who was stealing from him." I looked at the email copies. "Can I use these?" "Use everything. They'll come after you." She looked toward the backpacks. "They already cost me a job. Maybe this gets me my spine back." Before I left, handed me a flash drive. "What is it?" "Room audio." Maple Glen had fall monitor devices. They claim they don't record conversations. That's mostly true. But the system captures 10-second audio clips during sudden motion alerts. Arthur knocked his water cup off the tray that day. The monitor triggered right before the signing. I stared at the drive. "You kept this?" "I kept a lot after they fired me. In my truck, I plugged it into the laptop. The audio was tinny, brief, and devastating. Dad's voice, no sale, Cal. Hold still, this is how we protect you." "Dad, thief." Then, assistant, bored. "We need the signature to look continuous." A thud, Dad gasping. Again closer to the monitor, whispering, "He'll forget, just finish." 10 seconds. That was all. 10 seconds can turn grief into evidence. I the file twice before I drove back toward town. At a red light, my phone buzzed with a message from, "Stop digging before you embarrass Dad at his own funeral." I stared at it until the light turned green. Then I replied. Too late, he already started talking. His office sat above the old bank. The same building where Dad had opened my first savings account with $20 and a lecture about interest, had turned the second floor into a shrine to expensive wood, mahogany desk, leather chairs, brass lamp, diplomas framed larger than family photographs. He greeted me with the grim patience of a man used to cleaning blood off contracts. "Caleb," he said, "I was sorry to hear about Arthur. You helped my sister steal his farm." He sighed before I finished sitting. "I see we're beginning dramatically. I have the North Gate footage." His fingers stopped moving on the pen. Only for a moment. "Property transfers involving diminished capacity are emotionally difficult for families," he said. "Your father appointed your sister to manage affairs. She acted within that authority. He refused to sign. Capacity fluctuates." His hand was moved. "That's a serious allegation." The room monitor captured audio. That got him. Not much. Men do not collapse. They calcify. But his eyes shifted toward the door as if calculating who in the outer office could hear. "What do you want?" he asked. "The sale frozen, the deed challenged, every document your office drafted. You should speak with your own attorney." I did. "Not yet, but confidence sometimes needs to arrive before facts catch up." Leaned back. "Purchased in good faith. The transaction has progressed beyond family disagreement. If you interfere publicly, you could expose yourself to significant liability." My father said no. "Your father is dead." The sentence landed, with the quiet violence of a man showing his real tool. I stood, lifted a hand. "Sit down, Caleb, I'm not your enemy." "Then what are you?" "Practical." He opened a drawer and placed a folder on the desk. Inside was a cashier's check copy and a draft agreement. "Your sister anticipated your distress. She authorized a family settlement, $125,000. You sign a release, agree not to contest the sale, and allow the funeral to proceed without spectacle." I looked at the number. It was more money than I had in all accounts combined. It was less than 1 acre of the North Ridge would sell for, after carved it into luxury lots. "She thinks I'm that cheap. She thinks you're angry and grieving. She also thinks, correctly, that litigation is expensive." "Where did the settlement money come from?" "Said nothing." From Dad's farm. He adjusted his glasses. From estate liquidity. You people can make theft sound like weather. Close the folder. Do not mistake moral outrage for legal strategy. Families like yours lose land all the time because someone decides being right is enough. It isn't. That was the most honest thing he said. I took the draft agreement and folded it into my jacket. This isn't yours to take, he said. Evidence rarely belongs to the person who wrote it. Outside, the air smelled like snow that had not arrived yet. I sat in my truck and called the only attorney I trusted, Vale, a probate litigator who had once helped Dad fight a pipeline easement and made 3 corporate lawyers cry without raising her voice. She answered on the 4th ring. Caleb Hart, she said, your father still owes me a jar of peach preserves. My throat tightened. He died. Silence. I'm sorry, she said and meant it. Sold the farm, forged power of attorney, is involved. Drafted it. I have video and audio. Another silence, sharper. Where are you? Outside's office. Good. Take photographs of everything in your possession. Drive nowhere predictable. And email me copies from a public Wi-Fi network. Do not confront your sister again. Do not threaten anyone. Do not post online. And Caleb. Yes. Do not let the funeral happen quietly. Wanted the funeral at the small chapel inside. I changed it to the church. She fought me until sent a letter reminding that Arthur Hart's prepaid funeral plan named First Methodist as the preferred venue and listed both children as family contacts. The funeral director, suddenly less interested in certainty, called me within the hour. Your father did have instructions, he said carefully. Of course he did. Dad had prepared for death. He had not prepared for editing it. By Saturday morning, the church was full. Farmhands came in clean boots. Neighbors came with casseroles. Men from the co-op stood along the back wall, hats in hand, faces weathered and hard, sat in the second row. Mendes sat near the side exit with her sister. Sat behind me in a charcoal suit, a leather folder in her lap, calm as a loaded gun. Arrived last. That was intentional. She wanted an entrance. She wore our mother's pearls again. Behind her came Pierce from, and 2 men I did not know but could identify by their shoes as lawyers or developers. She kissed cheeks, hugged women, pressed tissues into hands. Watching her comfort people over a death she had weaponized made my skin feel too tight. The coffin rested beneath the old wooden cross. This time, the flag was there. I had found it in the attic trunk and brought it myself. The pastor spoke first. He talked about Dad's patience, his stubbornness, his love for the land. Then he invited family to share memories. Stood before I could. Dad taught us sacrifice, she began. Leaned forward slightly. I stayed seated. His voice trembled beautifully. In his final months, he made difficult choices to protect this family. Some people may not understand those choices. Some may be angry. But Dad knew that love sometimes means letting go. Letting go. The phrase moved through the church like smoke. He chose peace, she said. He chose to free us from burdens we could no longer carry. His hands clenched around his hat. I looked at Dad's coffin and thought about him writing with a ruined hand. I am not saved. Turned toward me, tears shining. I hope one day my brother can forgive me for doing what Dad asked. There it was, the trap baited and sprung. If I rose angry, she became the grieving daughter attacked at a funeral. If I stayed quiet, her version entered the room unchallenged. Touched my elbow once. Now, I stood. The church creaked with the shift of bodies turning. My sister is right about one thing, I said. Dad believed love meant sacrifice. His face tightened. He sacrificed sleep for this farm, pride for this family, comfort for neighbors who needed help and never paid him back, but he did not sacrifice his voice. That was taken. A murmur moved through the pews. Stood halfway. Caleb, this is not appropriate. Sit down, you're in the next part. The church went silent. I nodded to the young man in the sound booth, his grandson, who had spent the night helping me connect a laptop to the church projector. The screen lowered behind the pulpit. Whispered, don't. Not angry, not commanding. Afraid. For the first time all week, she sounded like the younger sister who used to hide broken things under my bed. I almost stopped. Then Dad's handwriting flashed in my mind. Don't trust her tears. I pressed play. The first image on the church screen was the north gate. Gray sky, wind in the weeds, the oak on the ridge, his white blouse bright against all that old dirt. People shifted, confused. Then her voice came through the speakers. He can't object, he doesn't have capacity on paper. Handled it. Made a small sound in the front row. No one looked at her yet. They were still watching the screen, still trying to understand why grief had been interrupted by a driveway. The video continued. Caleb, he's 3 states away and broke enough to be manageable. Dad keeps asking for him, but the nurses know not to put calls through unless I approve it. That was when the room changed. It was subtle, shoulders stiffened, heads turned. The sympathy had harvested, began to rot in people's hands. On screen, opened his folder. Once the deed transfers, he said, wires the first payment into the estate account, then your management fee disperses separately. Pierce looked toward the camera without seeing it. And the medical liaisons laughed, exaggerated. People hear nursing home and stop asking questions. Sympathy does the paperwork for you. Someone in the back pew said, Lord have mercy. I did not look at. I watched the congregation watch her. The clip jumped to October 18. Dusk. Alone at the gate, phone on speaker. I didn't steal it, she snapped. I rescued it before Caleb turned Dad into a vegetable farmer with delusions. The old man was alive, yes, but alive doesn't mean in charge. Beside me, the pastor closed his eyes. Once he's gone, video continued, the funeral will shut Caleb up. People don't fight grieving daughters. The audio ended. The church held its breath, stood so fast the pearls struck her collarbone. This is edited, she said. This is disgusting. At Dad's funeral, you should be ashamed. Her voice rose exactly where it needed to rise. Outrage, hurt, performance. But this time the room had heard the rehearsal notes. I clicked the next file. Black screen. Tinny audio from Maple Glen's fall monitor. Dad, no sale Cal. Hold still, this is how we protect you. Dad, thief. Assistant. We need the signature to look continuous. He'll forget, just finish. A woman sobbed somewhere behind me. Mendy stood, voice shaking but clear. I witnessed that, I reported it. Maple Glen fired me. Devin Price, who had slipped into the back of the church unnoticed, turned toward the exit, was already there. Mr. Price, she said pleasantly. The deputy outside would like a word. Looked at Pierce, but he had become fascinated by the floor. Whispered something into his phone. Jason Heller, the county deputy, moved from the back wall toward the front, face grim. Caleb said, my name again, smaller now. Please. I had waited my whole life to hear my sister say please without strategy in it. The tragedy was that I still could not trust it. Dad asked for me, I said. You told them not to put the calls through. Her mouth trembled. I was drowning. So you held him under. That broke something in her. The tears came hard now, ugly and uncontrolled. People think real tears always mean truth. They don't. Sometimes they mean the lie has nowhere left to stand. The deputy reached her pew. Heart, he said, low enough to be respectful of the coffin and loud enough for everyone to hear. We need you to come with us. At his funeral, she whispered. I looked at Dad's coffin. You planned it that way. As they led her down the aisle, our mother's pearls snapped. Tiny white beads scattered across the church floor, rolling under pews, disappearing into cracks. Impossible to gather whole again. No symbol has ever been less subtle. The will reading happened anyway. Not at the farmhouse. Refused to let anyone enter until the court addressed ownership. We held it in the church hall between folding tables, coffee urns, and casseroles no one could eat. Dad would have liked that better. Did not conduct the reading. By then, he had discovered an urgent conflict and delegated the matter to an associate who looked young enough to still believe law was mostly about rules. Sat beside me with copies of everything. Stood by the door like an old guard dog. Stayed near the kitchen, hands wrapped around a paper cup. Was not there. The deputy had taken her statement at the station. She had not been arrested yet, warned me. Law moves carefully when money wears paperwork, but attorneys had already called twice. Had stopped answering his phone. Maple Glen had placed Devin Price on leave, which is what institutions call panic when they want it to sound responsible. The associate opened Dad's will with a shaking hand. It was dated 5 years earlier, long before the stroke. It left the farm to a trust, Hart Ridge Land Trust. Beneficiaries, and me equally. Restrictions, no sale to developers for 25 years. Agricultural lease rights to Mercer for as long as he wanted to work the land. The farmhouse to be maintained as family property or converted into veteran respite housing if neither child lived there. Dad had built a fence around the future. Had tried to sell the fence. There were smaller bequests. Mom's pearls were to be divided into 2 bracelets for future granddaughters if any arrived, or donated with Mom's dresses to the women's shelter if not. Dad's old truck went too. His seed journals went to the county agricultural archive. Then the associate read the letter. Dad had written it before everything went bad. when his handwriting still marched straight across the page. Caleb, land is not proof that a family loves each other. I know that. Sometimes land becomes the thing people hide behind when they are too proud to say sorry. I have made mistakes with both of you. I let Caleb leave believing distance meant peace. I let stay believing responsibility meant ownership. Those were my failures. But this farm belongs to more than us now. It belongs to the men who worked it, the neighbors who borrowed from it, the ashes of your mother scattered by the South Creek, and the promises I made to my father when I was young enough to think promises were easy. Do not sell because you are tired. Rest first. Do not sell because you are angry. Wait first. Do not sell because someone with clean shoes tells you dirt is worth more as pavement. If one of you tries to force the other, remember, I loved you both, but love is not permission. The young associate's voice cracked on the last line. So did mine. For all my rage, for all the evidence, for all the public collapse of my sister's performance, that letter hurt in a different place. Dad had seen us. Not perfectly, not soon enough, but more clearly than either of us wanted. Afterward, people came to me in a line that felt too much like another viewing. Some apologized for believing. Some said they had always wondered. Some said nothing and only squeezed my shoulder. Pierce did not come forward. He left through the side door with his lawyers. Waited until the hall emptied. Your dad knew she'd try something, he said. How much did he know? Looked toward the windows, where the farm road was hidden beyond town and trees. Enough to be scared, not enough to stop it. That was the sentence that stayed with me. Enough to be scared, not enough to stop it. I wondered how many people live there, trapped between knowing the danger and lacking the strength, authority, or witnesses to survive being right. Closed her folder. Now, she said, we make the paperwork tell the same truth everyone heard today. Land Group invited me to a meeting on Monday, told me not to go unless she came. Also told me not to speak unless she kicked me under the table. I asked whether she meant literally. With affection, she said. Its regional office was glass, steel, and bad faith. In the lobby, a wall display showed smiling families walking dogs on land that had recently been forest, pasture, or someone's grandmother's backyard. Meadows was there too. Digital renderings of white houses, curved roads, a playground, and the old heart oak preserved as a heritage feature beside a decorative pond. They had turned my father's life into landscaping. Pierce greeted us with a face trained for investors. Caleb, he said, we're all distressed by what came to light. Looked at him, are we? The conference room held 2 attorneys, a silent woman from public relations, and a man named Victor who introduced himself as acquisitions director. Victor had the calm, hollow eyes of someone who had bought many things from people in crisis and called it timing. We purchased in good faith, Victor said. Opened her folder. You purchased after recorded conversations, confirming Arthur Hart had not consented. We were not aware of any recordings. No, she said, but you were aware he was alive, incapacitated, refusing final consent, and represented by a newly executed power of attorney arranged through the seller's sister and a lawyer known for distressed asset transfers. Victor's smile faded by half, leaned forward. Mr. Hart, we understand emotions are high, is prepared to discuss a revised family compensation package. No. His heel touched my shoe under the table. Not a kick, a warning. Victor steepled his fingers. You may find reversal impossible. Development rights have been assigned. Preliminary costs have been incurred. Investors rely on certainty. My father relied on his children. Look how that went. Did kick me then. Slid a document across the table. 7 figures. Confidential. You and your sister both sign. We restructure the trust, preserve a memorial parcel around the farmhouse, and move forward respectfully. Respectfully. I had heard enough language like that to know it meant they would build over the bones and name a street after Dad. Picked up the document, glanced at it, and laughed. Not loudly, not rudely, worse, amused. This release requires Mr. Hart to affirm Arthur Hart knowingly approved the sale. Victor shrugged. Standard language. It's perjury bait. It's settlement language. It's adorable. The PR woman stopped taking notes, placed 3 still images on the table. At the gate, with the folder holding champagne. Here is what will happen, she said. We file for injunctive relief. We notify the Attorney General's Elder Exploitation Unit. We subpoena your internal communications. We ask why continue to deal after field agents reported family conflict and capacity concerns. We invite the local press to ask why your luxury development depended on a dead farmer being silenced before his funeral. Victor looked at me then, really looked. You want war over dirt? Smiled before I could answer. No, she said. We want discovery. War is what people threaten when discovery scares them. We left without taking the offer. In the elevator, my hands began to shake, noticed and said nothing until we reached the parking lot. You did fine, she said. I wanted to punch him. Yes, you didn't, that's why you did fine. Across the street, a glass building reflected the sky so perfectly it looked transparent. It wasn't. Nothing that expensive ever is. Called me from an unknown number 3 days after the funeral. I almost did not answer. Had told me no direct contact, but grief is not obedient, and neither is history. I stepped outside the farmhouse, stood under the empty porch hooks where Mom's swing used to be, and said nothing. Caleb whispered. Jail had not touched her yet, not formally, but her voice had lost its polish. She sounded younger, stripped down to the sister who once hid in the hayloft when thunder scared her. Don't call me. I need 1 hour. No, please. The word again. I looked toward the north gate. The camera watched patiently. Talk to. I don't want lawyers, I want my brother. That nearly worked. It enraged me that it nearly worked. You should have wanted him, before you isolated our father. She started crying. Quietly this time, not staged tears, exhausted ones. I know what you think I did. I know what you did. Not all of it. The air changed. What does that mean? She breathed hard into the phone. Dad was going to cut me out. I frowned. That will split the trust equally. Not that will. A new one. After the stroke. He kept threatening to change everything because he thought I was stealing. You were stealing. Not at first. A flock of blackbirds lifted from the south field. At first, she said, I used his account for bills. Real bills. Maple Glen wanted deposits. The roof needed work. There were taxes. I was drowning Caleb. Then my card got declined buying his medication, and I borrowed from the farm account. I meant to put it back. How much? Silence. 30,000, then more. How much more? 87 before the sale. I closed my eyes. Dad found out. He found one statement. He called me a thief and asked for you. He said he would sign everything to you because at least you hadn't picked his pockets while he was still breathing. The cruelty of Dad saying that, and the cruelty of her proving him right tangled together until I could not tell which hurt more. So you forged power of attorney. Said if Dad changed the will while impaired, it would be a mess. He said selling quickly protected everyone. And your management fee. Her voice went flat. You know about that. Yes. I wanted something that was mine. There it was again, the hole nothing could fill. The farm wasn't yours. Neither were you, she snapped. I went still. What? She was breathing fast now, too far in to stop. You were Mom's. You were Dad's. You were everybody's golden boy because you left and became impressive. I stayed and became furniture. Then Dad got sick and suddenly I mattered because someone had to wipe his mouth and argue with insurance and smell death every day. And even then, he wanted you. The porch blurred. Not because I felt sorry for her exactly. Because beneath all that greed was something almost more pathetic. A child counting love like coins and deciding theft was the only math left. I said, Dad asking for me didn't mean he didn't need you. It felt the same. That was the first honest thing she had said. It changed nothing. Turn yourself in, I said. She laughed softly. Would you visit me? I did not answer. Right, she said, I thought so. Give back what you can. Testify against and tell the truth while it still belongs partly to you. Silence. Then she said, I don't know how. I looked at the empty hooks again. Start by stopping. She hung up. I sent a summary of the call. I did not send the recording immediately. For 5 minutes, I let myself mourn the sister I had wanted instead of the one I had. Then I sent it. The injunction hearing took 42 minutes. Said it was supposed to take 15. Brought 3 attorneys. Brought 1. Maple Glen sent a representative and appeared with a public defender who looked like he had been assigned to a burning building and handed a paper cup of water. I sat in the second row behind and tried not to look at my sister. She looked smaller in court. Not innocent. Not destroyed. Smaller, as if the world had finally resized her to match the truth. Judge Helen Roy was 70, sharp-eyed and allergic to wasted language. She read filing while everyone sat in silence. Then she looked over her glasses. I have watched the submitted video clips, she said. I have heard the audio, I am not amused. No one moved. Lead attorney argued good faith purchase. Attorney argued proper execution. Defender argued stress, caregiver burden, and contested family interpretation. Maple Glen's representative argued that facility staff followed family authority as presented. Judge Roy let them build their small houses of words. Then she knocked them flat. The court is issuing a temporary injunction freezing all development, transfer, demolition, subdivision, or encumbrance of the Hart property pending full evidentiary review, she said. The deed transfer is suspended. Financial accounts connected to the sale are frozen. Mr. Your office will preserve all files, correspondence, notes, drafts, billing records, and communications connected to this matter. Will do the same. Maple Glen will produce visitor logs, medication charts, incident reports, and surveillance retention policies under protective order. Looked like a man swallowing glass. Then came the part none of them expected. Judge Roy turned to Ms. Hart, you will surrender your passport. You will not contact potential witnesses except through counsel. You will not enter the Hart property without court permission. You will provide a complete accounting of funds received directly or indirectly from the disputed transaction. Nodded without looking up. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Had warned me. Local press loved land fights, family betrayal, and developers caught on camera. We had all three, plus a funeral. No dramatic statements, she said. I know. No revenge language. I know. No saying looks like a wax figure with tax problems. I wasn't going to. She looked at me. Out loud, I amended. The reporter asked what I wanted. I thought about Dad, about the note, about the gate camera, about saying people do not fight grieving daughters, about all the people who had almost helped her be right. I want my father's no to mean no, I said, even after death. That became the headline. Farmer's son. And why father's no SHOULD still mean no. By evening, investors were calling. By morning, one. By the next afternoon, the Attorney General announced a preliminary inquiry into elder financial exploitation connected to the Hart transfer. Discovery began like a slow storm. Emails arrived first. Field notes mentioned daughter eager, son potential obstacle. Billing records listed capacity workaround strategy. Maple Glen internal messages included one from Devin Price, wants all calls from Caleb blocked, says father gets upset. No chart notes needed unless state asks. Then found the account labeled consulting. Had received $180,000 before the sale fully closed. Not 87. Not survival money. 180,000. When told me, I sat in the farmhouse kitchen staring at the repainted wall where my childhood height marks had been erased. She lied even in confession, I said. Sighed. People often tell only the amount they think will still allow sympathy. I wanted to feel surprised. Instead, I felt something harder. Finished. Turned on first. Called it predictable. I called it anatomy. A drowning person will climb anyone, including the hand that pushed them in. Her statement arrived through prosecutors 2 weeks after discovery exposed the consulting account. She admitted misusing Dad's funds. She admitted lying to Maple Glen about my calls. She admitted told her the power of attorney could be made clean if the facility cooperated and Dad's medication schedule was favorable. She did not say she forged it. Not yet. She said she believed she was following legal guidance. Read that line aloud and snorted. That's not remorse, she said. That's a plea posture. But the statement opened doors. Assistant, the woman heard in the audio, received her own subpoena and suddenly remembered emails. Devin Price remembered pressure from and Pierce remembered concerns he had heroically raised in internal conversations after the funeral video made forgetting impossible. Everyone became brave once the building was already on fire. The full chain emerged in pieces. Owed money, credit cards, a failed boutique business, a private loan from Pierce's cousin. Wanted the North Ridge because it connected 2 existing parcels and made their whole development viable. Connected them. Maple Glen provided paperwork access. Dad resisted. Medication timing solved the signature problem. A funeral solved the public relations problem. And me. I was the distant son, the manageable obstacle. On paper, I had been reduced to geography. One night, after 12 hours of reviewing documents, I found an email from to dated May 29. Caleb will make noise if he thinks Dad was pressured. Need story to be about medical bills and me sacrificing everything. People believe daughters who stay. I printed it and sat with it until dawn. People believe daughters who stay. She had not been wrong. That was the part that kept cutting. The story worked because it leaned on something real. Caregivers are ignored. Daughters are expected to absorb suffering. Sons do leave and return righteous. Had taken a real wound and wrapped a crime inside it. That is how the most durable lies survive. They borrow pain. The prosecutor offered a deal. Testify fully against. Executives involved in the pressure campaign and Maple Glen administrators. Plead to elder exploitation, fraud, and obstruction. Recommend reduced prison time with restitution. She asked to see me before signing. Said no. I said yes. We met in a courthouse conference room with lawyers present, because I had learned that family without witnesses is where my sister did her best work. Wore no pearls. Her hair was pulled back. Her face looked bare in a way makeup had never allowed. I'm signing, she said. Good. I need to tell you something first. I waited. She looked at her hands. Dad knew about the first withdrawal, not the rest. The first, it was for the roof and Maple Glen. He forgave me. I said nothing. He said, don't make needing help into being owed everything. That sounded exactly like Dad. I hated him for that, she whispered. Because he was right. She nodded once, barely. The room was quiet. Do you hate me? She asked. I thought about giving her the answer that would hurt most. Then I thought about Dad's letter. Love is not permission. I love you, I said. I don't know what to do with it. She cried then. No performance. No audience that mattered. Just the ruin left after strategy failed. That's worse, she said. I know. She signed the deal before sunset. By morning, had resigned from 2 boards. Maple Glen's parent company had hired crisis counsel, and Meadows' project was officially suspended. Dad's no had reached the county line. Winter held the farm like a fist. The fields froze hard. The pond silvered at the edges. Every morning, I walked the north gate before coffee, partly to check locks, partly because my body still needed proof the land was there. The sign was gone. Sent someone to remove it after the injunction. They did it at dawn, quietly, as if ashamed. Watched from his truck with a thermos and said nothing until the worker drove away. Could have left it, he said. Scarecrows need faces. I laughed for the first time in weeks. The farm was not safe yet. Nothing legal is safe until the last appeal exhausts itself or the last liar runs out of money. But the immediate danger had passed. No bulldozers, no survey flags, no men in clean shoes calling our creek frontage, premium water adjacency, filed to restore the trust. Prosecutors moved on, claimed rogue employees. Maple Glen claimed policy failures. Everyone claimed distance from the thing that had made them money. In a closed hearing, I did not attend. I read the transcript later. She described moving Dad's hand. She described blocking my calls. She described champagne at the gate and phrase, grief creates urgency, urgency closes deals. She cried twice, according to the notation. The court reporter did not specify whether the tears were useful. The worst part came near the end. Question, did Arthur Hart consent to the sale? Answer, no. Question, did he understand the property was being transferred? Answer, he understood enough to refuse. He understood enough to refuse. I put the transcript down and went outside. The South Creek ran behind the house, narrow and black under ice. Mom's ashes were there, scattered beneath the sycamores because she said cemeteries were too crowded and she preferred moving water. Dad had planned to join her there. Had nearly sold the ground around both of them to people who would have called the walking trail sway and thought that meant respect. I stood by the creek until my face hurt from cold. I stopped it, I said. The water moved under ice, indifferent and alive. Then I said the harder thing. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Wind moved through dry grass. No answer. Forgiveness from the dead is something the living invent when they need relief. Dad could not give it now. Mom could not either. All I could do was tell the truth where a lie had been planted and let that be the only apology available. Found me there. Court called, he said, trying you. I wiped my face before turning. Trying me. Her words said answer your damn phone. Snooze was simple, wanted out. Full rescission. Cooperation. Payment into restitution. Public statement acknowledging capacity concerns should have stopped the transaction. No admission of intentional wrongdoing, she said. Naturally. Naturally. We can fight for stronger language. I looked across the creek, the sycamores, the field beyond. Will the farm be ours again? If the judge approves the rescission, yes. Title reverts to the trust pending final orders. I closed my eyes. For months, everything had been about stopping loss. I had forgotten what return might feel like. It did not feel like victory. It felt like carrying something fragile back from a fire, then realizing your hands were burned. Do it, I said. That night, I slept in Dad's room for the first time. Not because I was ready, because readiness had become less important than staying. Sentencing happened in spring. By then, the fields had softened. Planted soybeans on the east acres under a court-approved lease, grumbling that lawyers could make even weather submit a form. The farmhouse had heat again. The porch swing hooks remained empty because I had not decided what deserved to hang there. The courtroom was full. Sat beside her public defender in a navy dress that did not fit her old image or her new reality. Sat 2 tables away with private counsel. Devin Price sat behind him, waiting for his own hearing. Pierce had taken a cooperation deal and looked like a man who had discovered that developers also get developed. Judge Roy handled them separately. First, suspension of license pending disciplinary review. Restitution. Prison time for fraud and elder exploitation conspiracy. He received the sentence like an insult to his schedule. Devin received probation and a permanent mark on his record for falsifying care documentation. Mendes watched without blinking. Stood last. The prosecutor described the crime cleanly. A caregiver daughter exploited authority over a vulnerable parent, forged consent, isolated him from another child, misused funds, and attempted to launder the act through a funeral narrative. Funeral narrative. Even prosecutors needed phrases to hold ugliness without touching it directly. Then I gave my statement. I had written 3 versions. Angry, noble, devastated. None worked. In the end, I spoke from a single page. My sister stole land, I said. But before that, she stole access. She made sure my father could not reach the people who would have believed him. That was the real crime. The deed mattered. The money mattered. But the first theft was his voice. Looked down. I do not ask the court to pretend caregiver burden isn't real. It is real. It breaks people. It isolates people. It makes resentment sound reasonable in your own head. But burden does not create ownership over another person's body, bank account, land, or voice. My father said no. Everyone in this case found a way to make his no inconvenient. I folded the page. I want the sentence to say that inconvenient no still counts. Judge Roy's face did not change, but she wrote something down. Spoke after me. She did not ask for forgiveness. That mattered. She apologized to Dad, to me, to the people who had believed her. She said she had told herself proximity was sacrifice, and sacrifice was debt, and debt was permission. She said she knew now that each step had been a choice. I don't know how to be sorry enough, she said. For once, no one helped her. The judge sentenced her to prison, less than the maximum, more than her attorney requested. Restitution. No contact with me except through counsel while incarcerated. No claim to trustee authority. Mandatory testimony in remaining civil proceedings. Cried when they took her back. I cried too, in the parking lot, where nobody could misunderstand it as mercy. Stood beside me and looked at the courthouse doors. Your dad would hated this, he said. Which part? All of it. That was true. People say justice like it arrives clean. It doesn't. It tracks mud into every room. It makes you grateful and sick at the same time. It gives you back the farm and leaves you with a sister behind bars, a father in the ground, and a version of yourself who now knows exactly what family can do with a pen. When I got home, the farm was green at the edges. I stood at the north gate and removed the old doorbell camera carefully. Not to throw away, to preserve. It had done its work. The Hart Ridge Land Trust was restored in June, brought the signed order to the farmhouse, because she said some documents deserved to arrive at the place they protected. She laid it on Dad's kitchen table beside 2 mugs of coffee and 1 jar of peach preserves had found in the cellar, labeled in Dad's handwriting 3 summers earlier. It's official, she said. The sale is void. Title belongs to the trust. Trustee authority is removed. You are acting trustee with court supervision for 2 years. I touched the paper. The law had taken months to say what Dad had said in 3 words. No sale, no power. What happens after 2 years? You appoint a co-trustee. Ideally, someone not currently incarcerated for stealing from the trust. Funny. I specialize in probate comedy. Narrow audience. We sat with coffee while sunlight moved across the table. The kitchen still showed signs of erasure. Repainted wall, missing rooster, empty hooks. But some things had returned. Dad's seed caps. Mom's recipe box. Boots by the door because he had apparently decided knocking was for strangers and salesmen. Have you decided what to do with the farmhouse? Asked. I looked toward the hallway. Dad's letter had offered 2 futures. Family home or veteran respite housing. I had spent weeks avoiding the choice because both felt like betrayals of something. If I lived there, I became the son who inherited what his sister lost. If I converted it, I admitted the family home was no longer a family home. Both, I said. Raised an eyebrow. I'll live here part-time. The West Wing becomes 2 respite rooms. Veterans, caregivers, families dealing with medical transitions, short stays, no cost, can keep farming. The trust pays maintenance from crop income and restitution. Smiled, Arthur would approve. I hated how much I needed to hear that. We filed the amendment in July. By August, volunteers were painting rooms. Helped design medical access protocols because she had found work at a better facility and had somehow not lost faith in care itself. Built a ramp while complaining about every measurement. The church women donated quilts. Even people who had believed came, carrying casseroles and shame. And I learned to accept the help without pretending it erased anything. The first family arrived in September. A retired mechanic named, recovering from a stroke, and his wife, who looked like sleep had become a rumor, moved slowly, speech broken. Apologized for everything, bags in the hall, needing help, crying when the porch light came on automatically. Don't, I told her. She looked embarrassed. Don't apologize for needing a place to breathe. That night, I heard in the West Room, practicing words with his therapist over video call. No, home, stay. Each word landed in the house like a repair. I went outside and sat beneath the porch hooks. The new swing had not arrived yet. I had ordered one from a carpenter 2 towns over, oak, plain, built to last. Mom would have called it too expensive. Dad would have pretended not to like it, then sat there every evening. My phone buzzed. A letter notification from the prison system had written. I did not open it right away. Instead, I watched the fields darken, listened to strangers sleeping safely inside the house she had nearly turned into a sales office, and thought about how land can hold more than memory if the living stop trying to own it like a prize. Maybe that was what Dad meant. Not never sell, never forget what a thing is for. His letter arrived in a white envelope stamped with numbers. For 3 days, I left it on the mantel beside Dad's watch. I told myself I was busy with the respite rooms, crop reports, court accounting, and insurance forms. All true, none the reason. The reason was simpler. I was afraid she would sound like herself. On the 4th morning, I opened it before coffee. Caleb, they make us take accountability classes here. You would hate them. Not because accountability is bad, but because the worksheets are. They ask us to list the harm we caused. I keep running out of lines. I know that sounds like something I would write to seem self-aware. Maybe it is. I don't know yet how to tell the difference between honesty and wanting credit for honesty. That's probably one of the things wrong with me. I laughed once despite myself, then kept reading. She wrote about prison without drama. The noise, the boredom, the humiliation of being treated like a number after spending her life trying to become the person holding the clipboard. She wrote about Dad. I keep hearing him say, "Don't make needing help into being owed everything." I used to think he was refusing to understand me. Now I think he understood too much, and I hated being seen without an excuse. She wrote about Mom's pearls. I found one bead in my coat pocket after the funeral. I don't know how it got there. They let me keep it for a week before intake took it. I was furious, which is ridiculous because I had already taken the whole necklace for years. I think I finally understood sharing, after losing even one bead. I stopped there for a while. Outside, his tractor moved along the east field, steady as an old heartbeat. The final page was shorter. I'm not asking to come home when I get out. I know home isn't mine that way. But if there is ever a day when the trust needs paperwork, or weeds pulled or floors scrubbed, I would like to do something that doesn't put me in charge of anything. I don't know if I love you correctly. I know I love you. I'm sorry that has never been safe by itself. I folded the letter and set it beside Dad's watch. Then I made coffee. I did not forgive her that morning. Forgiveness is too often demanded like rent from the people who were harmed. But something shifted. Not toward her, exactly. Toward a future in which my anger did not have to supervise every room. That afternoon, and left the respite wing. Hugged me in the driveway and cried again, apologizing until I reminded her. Shook my hand with his good hand and said one word clearly. Home. I stood there after they drove away, thinking about how Dad had used the same word when his speech was breaking. Home. Not property, not asset, not leverage, not burden. Home. A month later, I wrote back. I kept it short. The farm is still here. Dad's no still stands. The respite rooms are open. Says your weed-pulling form is terrible, but he is willing to supervise after your release if the court allows it. I don't know what forgiveness looks like. I know what repair looks like. It starts small. Caleb. I did not say I loved her. Not because I didn't. Because, for once in our family, I wanted love to arrive after truth, not instead of it. But 2 years after Dad's funeral, the Northgate camera sat in a display case in the farmhouse hallway. Called it dramatic, called it ugly, called it necessary. I called it what it was, a witness retired with honor. Beneath it was a small brass plate. Arthur Hart said no. This recorded who did not listen. The trust board met quarterly now, served as legal advisor, oversaw care policies, represented the agricultural lease, mostly by insulting any suggestion involving the word optimization. I remained acting trustee, though court supervision had ended, and I could appoint a permanent structure whenever I was ready. Readiness had become less frightening. It no longer meant certainty. It meant telling the truth before making the next decision. The farm changed slowly. Soybeans rotated with hay. The respite rooms stayed full but never crowded. The farmhouse held veterans after surgeries, spouses after burnout, adult children who had driven too far and slept too little. No one paid. Everyone signed plain language forms. No hidden authority. No private meetings. No clean shoes talking anyone out of their own voice. Came home in October. Not to the farmhouse. To a supervised workday approved by the court and the board. She arrived in jeans, hair gray at the temples, face thinner, carrying work gloves and no expectation of being welcomed. Handed her a rake. South fence line, he said. Weeds think they're family, prove them wrong. Almost smiled. I watched from the porch as she worked under his supervision, awkward at first, then steadily. Nobody clapped. Nobody announced redemption. The day did not soften itself to make her feel better. At lunch, she sat at the end of the picnic table with the volunteers. She did not take Dad's chair. That mattered. Afterward, she approached the hallway display and stood before the camera. I hate that thing, she said. I know. I'm glad it existed. I know that too. She looked at the brass plate for a long time. He said no, she said. Yes. I heard burden, I heard accusation, I heard him choosing you, but he said no. That's all it needed to mean. I did not answer. Some realizations do not need applause. They need silence big enough to enter. Before she left, she gave me a small envelope. Inside were 12 pearl beads, mismatched, recovered from the church floor by women who had apparently spent weeks finding them in cracks, under pews, inside purse linings, and once in the heating vent. Not all of them said no, maybe enough to make something smaller. I thought about Mom's note. Share them because both of you came from me. Maybe, I said. That evening, after everyone left, I walked to the north gate. There was no camera now. I had chosen not to replace it immediately. For a long time, that felt careless. Then it felt like a test, not of trust in people. I had no interest in becoming naive. A test of whether I could stand at the place where the lie was caught and not need the world watched every second to believe it was real. The gate was chained. The field beyond was dark. The old oak stood against the sky, alive in the stubborn way of things that survive weather and human plans. I thought about Dad's funeral, his voice filling the church, the pearls scattering, the whole county hearing what she thought grief would hide. People say the truth comes out. It doesn't. The truth is usually trapped in a file, a camera, a notebook, a throat, waiting for someone with shaking hands to open the right thing at the worst possible moment. Dad left me a note. The camera kept watch. I pressed play. But after that, justice was not the video. It was every ordinary day that followed. The farm still standing, the rooms lit, the documents open, the gate closed for the right reasons, and my father's no carried forward by people who finally understood that love without consent is only control wearing a familiar face. I locked the gate and walked home. For once, nothing followed me but the sound of my own steps.